Let's bring in the big gun. Lou Merloni joins us here on Boston, has entered the chat. Lou, let's start right there. I mean, there's plenty to discuss, obviously, with Rafi, but I want to go to how the team's playing on the field. With Rafi's help, of course, taking 2 out of 3 from the Royals. This team's playing well, Lou. I think that outweighs everything else going on with this team, don't you?
Yeah, you guys forgot Hunter Dobbins, too, by the way. I mean, they scored 2 runs in extra innings. They scored 2 runs, basically, all weekend, the Royals, on their own, without, ghost runners. So I think the pitching showed up. That was the big key. And obviously the bats, Crochet. Giolito, to me, was one of the biggest stories of the weekend, because what you saw in his last outing, and he talked about it afterwards, being a 2-pitch guy. The fastball was 91, 92. It was cold. There was no location, but he didn't throw any sliders, didn't throw any curveballs. All of a sudden, what we saw yesterday, 95 with a curveball to lefties, a slider to righties, the changeup's always there. Like, to me, that was one of the biggest revelations moving forward on the weekend. So it's nice for them to kind of put out a little bit of the noise, put that out for a while with everything that was going on with Rafi and John Henry being out there to talk to him. So, but they played good baseball, and this is the hottest team in baseball. And now you got to face the best team in the American League. So it's another series.
Yeah, like you bring up Giolito, I want to talk more about him, because going from his first start to his second, it was day and night.
Yep.
You're talking about what he's bringing with his pitching repertoire, but what else stood to you of, and this is big, Walker Buehler being banged up. You need someone like a Giolito to stand up, and we know how important the pitching is for this team. What about Lucas Giolito? Did you see, Lou, that, hey, take this, run with it, build upon it in 2025?
Well, I think it's the off speed. Even in his rehab outings, I some people had talked to me like, he's fastball changeup only. The slider's not playing, the curveball's not playing. Like when he was rehabbing, guys who were down in Worcester watching him. And then even as good as he threw in that Toronto game, he really didn't have a feel for the breaking balls. It was really fastball changeup. And then the second start was even more so. So the fact that the slider played, got swing and miss against righties, and it was a good one. The fact that curveball played against lefties, and the role that he has on this team. Like you talk about Garrett Crochet, he is the ace, right? But it's his second year in the league. The role that he and Walker Buehler have, to me, on this staff, like, veterans, guys that have been there before, it's really important for them to stay healthy, to stay in this rotation. And it'd be nice if Giolito could look like that every single weekend because he was lights out.
No doubt. Lou, I want to ask you, really about Rafi here. Obviously, we're going to get to him in the field to play at first base or to not. We'll get to that later, but I want to ask you at the plate, because he's swinging the bat really well right now, Lou. What does it say about Rafi that he's still, swinging the bat really well, given everything that's going on? He's playing great at the plate, Lou.
Yeah, we've seen it from great hitters. There's so many things going on off the field, but, they're happy places in the box. They're happy places in the cage, and they just want to hit, and he's in that category. He's just one of the most dangerous hitters in the game. It has been. And there's been some injuries that have made some years not look as good as maybe they should have. But it's been impressive with all of it going around. I know the DH thing seems like, it was, months ago, maybe seems like years ago, but he's obviously settling in. What he's done since that 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts is unbelievable. And I think the most impressive thing was, I was just looking at it, it's like 27 walks to 32 strikeouts, right? Like he's not striking out as much. It's a 19% rate. He's walking more than anybody in baseball. The whole approach has been impressive. The fact that he's been put it all behind him. And even this weekend, let's face it, there's a lot of drama. The owner sits you down in a room before game 1, and you have the weekend that you have. I think that just tells you where his focus is.
Yeah, and I like you bring that up, Lou, because that shows that. And part of the frustration he was probably feeling was, you moved me to DH, and I'm hitting like top 5 in baseball. You take out that rough start to the season for him, those first 4 or 5 games. So he's like, I'm a top 5 bat right now. Yeah. Why hit reset on the first base spot? But also with him, when you're watching him hit, is this the vintage Devers we're so used to here in Boston? Or are you noticing anything different about him now that he could surely and just purely focus on hitting alone?
Well, he's been better. And this actually started even during this 0 for 19 stretch, because those first 5 games, as much as he was striking out, he was swinging and missing at strikes. Like he would still draw a walk, or he wouldn't expand the zone. And this has been an issue for him, right? Like he's a free swinger. He's an aggressive hitter. He's a bad ball hitter. That's great. And it was always, hey, if he could just sort of tighten it up a little bit, there's more 1-0 counts. There's more 2-0 counts. A pitcher doesn't know where to go anymore. The pitchers used to be able to expand the zone and get Rafi out. He'd get himself out. They don't know what to do. because he's not expanding. He's not chasing. So now they have to come in the zone. And early on, it was swing and miss. He wasn't there mechanically, spring training, whatever you want to say about it. He wasn't there. Now he's forcing you to come in the zone where he is extremely dangerous. I would say the last 30, 32 game stretch is probably some of the best we've seen from Rafael Devers.
And Lou, I want to ask you, because we saw when you came into the Bigs, it was second base to start. 2 seasons later, you make that switch to third. How long did that take okay, I'm going to make the switch, but for you to get acclimated playing a different position in the infield, especially at the major league level?
Well, for me, it was survival. And that's what it is for a lot of these guys, like Romy Gonzalez, Nick Solgaard, Abraham Toro. Where do you want me to play? Yes, I'm in, whatever it takes. And that's kind of like the mold that I was in. So for me, it was really, it was more of an example of 04 in Cleveland, end of camp, with left-handed hitting first baseman. They said, have you ever played first base before? I said, no. Well, okay, you're going to play there against lefties. And, start taking some ground balls, a little bit of work, and I find myself in a game a few days later. So, but I'm willing to do, whatever it takes just to stay in the field, not get sent down, right? So that's just sort of me. For him, I get it. Because I think this goes back to spring training and the discussion. Like, you've always wanted us to get better. When I look at free agency, Rafi, the only real right-handed impact bats that we can find out here are Bregman and Arenado. We're going to go after both of them. If that's the case, to both go Glovers. And that conversation, it's all easy to say now in hindsight, you know what I mean? But rather than putting your glove away, hey, we still like you to take ground balls at third. We still like you to take ground balls at first. Like, start to get some work there, because it's baseball. Like, what if Alex Bregman was the one that hurt his knee and not Tristan Casas? Like, would he be back at third base? I'd like to think so. So it's just, I think you set it up a little bit better, all this stuff would have went away. But I think eventually you're going to see him there. I just do. I think eventually you're going to see him at first base.
Lou, I think the Red Sox have a great opportunity to send a message to the rest of the American League with the Tigers now. 3 against them. They're tops of the AL. But they look good, Lou, but it's not some dominant juggernaut here. I think the American League is wide open. Do you believe the Sox have a chance to send a message here that they're for real in these next 3?
Yeah, I think messages in baseball don't last long. I thought you sent the message here this weekend, where you played a team that lost like 2 games in the last, whatever it is, 3 weeks, and you took them 2 out of 3. So you can go into Detroit and take 2 out of 3 and then come home and lose 2 out of 3 to Atlanta, and it's not really that much of a message. So this is like, I think all that messaging and statement stuff is more for us, more for fans, more for media, because in that clubhouse, it's really day to day. Like, they won that game yesterday, and they're like, okay, we got to play tomorrow. We got to beat Detroit, and if they win this game, okay, we got to win tomorrow. If we lose this game, we got to win tomorrow. Like, it's just, you're in that mode of, it doesn't really matter what we've been doing or what message we're sending. We need to win today's ball game and find a way to win it.
Speaking of messages, the Red Sox did send a message. You're taking this serious. John Henry, Sam Kennedy, Craig Breslow flew out to Kansas City on Friday. John Henry met with Rafael Devers one-on-one. Here's Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow back on Friday, what he had to say about mending it and also walking that line between being a former player but now the leader of the Red Sox front office.
There will be times where I believe acting in the best interest of the organization is probably going to be difficult and uncomfortable, and I have to do it anyway. That said, given my playing experience, I recognize that, these aren't easy asks to make, especially for someone who has undergone pretty significant transitions in roles over the last several months. But a difficult conversation is not a reason to avoid it.
So, Lou, we hear from Craig Breslow right there. What do you make of him pointing out, hey, I know it wasn't an easy ask to Rafi, but that doesn't mean I'm going to avoid that conversation?
No. Well, yeah, you can't. You look at all the scenarios, and he happens to be one. And to me, we keep talking about the transition to first base, and it may not go well defensively. Well, look around. Like, everyone you're asking to play there has never played there before. And let's face it, Tristan Casas, there was some footwork issues. There's always some range issues. He dropped a couple balls thrown to him in the air. It's not like, he was playing great defensively before he got hurt. This is about adding your best offensive team. And I think if you're a general manager, you sit there and say, well, I got this guy, Yoshida, that I don't know what to do with. He's a DH. He can't throw right now. And this is an opportunity to have Devers Yoshida in a lineup as opposed to Toro Devers, Sogard Devers, Romy Devers, utility guys who are very valuable to this team and help them win games. But on an everyday basis, how do I put my best offensive team out there? So, I don't know why those guys flew out. I think the one comment that I think Devers, when he started talking about Breslow, when he started talking about do your job, what's wrong with this GM, I think that sort of sparked a little, okay, we need to go talk to him to make sure everything's okay. Yeah. The stuff he started talking about the general manager, I don't know what went on in that meeting. We have no idea what went on in that meeting, but it didn't seem to affect him because you went out and absolutely destroyed the Royals.
Yeah, he did. Lou, the skipper spoke about this. Alex Cora said, listen, we need all hands on deck here. Let's take a listen to this. We'll react on the other side together.
Like I told Rafi, and I said it, a million times in Fort Myers, man. Like we don't tell players what not to say, right? And we respect them and we respect their opinions. Sometimes we don't agree. So most of the time we do agree, right? And to get to this point, it's kind of weird, But I think, the effort that they made to get here and be part of it, part of the solution instead of make it a big issue, I think it means a lot.
Okay, Lou, the question. Do you believe ultimately we will see Rafi at first base?
I do. I think it'll take some time. I have no idea. Settling in, whatever. Take some ground balls. I think eventually you do. But here's the thing. To me, it's like you really have to know whether that's going to happen or not. Because if not, you need a plan B. You know what I mean? If it's really not going to happen, what are we going to do there, permanently? I think you're fine for a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? I think you throw some guys over there. You hope they kind of have some productive at-bats and everything else. But I think eventually he will be there. If he's not, you better figure out what a solution could be for that position.
If you were to find that solution to you, Lou, what would make sense? I'm not going to ask, if you have someone on the outside, but also if you're looking at the major leaguers they have right now in this roster, what to you would make sense to figure out the first base position and the lineup?
Well, I know a lot of people talk about outside the organization, Anthony Rizzo. The last couple of years weren't kind to Anthony Rizzo. He hasn't played baseball in 4 months. He didn't have a spring training. People are upset for Breslow for not having depth at every single position. I think that's impossible. I think if you look around baseball and not every single team, they all have holes. They all a couple of holes here, a couple of holes there. And if you had Dom Smith in AAA, would that make you feel that much better?
Right.
Oh, okay, good for him. He get depth there. No, you're looking for a solution. I love Dom what he did last year, and you could go out and get a guy like that and maybe try to fill it for a little bit. But to me, it's you got to start thinking internally. What do I have? Do I have guys that can move around? And that's not my decision. Whether rookies, a guy like Campbell moving around so much, can he even pick up first base? I have no idea. These are discussions that they have right now, but they need to have everything and put everything on the table.
And Lou, taking a look into the clubhouse too, you said it when you're switching positions, it was all about survival. Rafael Devers in a much different situation. Yep. $300 million plus man. We know how long-term he is with the Red Sox. But how would you, if you were a player in the clubhouse, take him being candid, transparent, so honest, and so public about how he feels about this ask of him?
Well, I think if I knew the player really well, obviously you have some discussions with him, and there's some guys that obviously probably going to sit there and say, I agree, they're jerking you around and all this other stuff. Then there might be some other guys that's hey, it may make our team better. So you have those discussions with your teammates. It's just the way it is, I think those discussions are ongoing, I would think, and it's just, it has a lot to do with how you feel about a guy. I've played with guys before that have transitioned to different positions and obviously were very upset about it and eventually moved over there. And you look at a guy like Nick Pivetta. I don't think he was really excited about going out to the bullpen a few years back. He went out there, became one of the better relievers in the game. That is a position change. That is a new routine. That is a whole bunch of new things, But I'll say this. I'm one of the guys that's he can play first base. And then I'm watching the game at Fenway Park against Texas, and I'm watching Josh Smith not know what the hell he's doing over at first base and cause an injury to Romy Gonzalez because his foot's in the middle of the bag. Yeah. You're watching some bad footwork. Romy's feet got a little bit messed up at one point. Yeah. There was one game, I even said in the telecast, this is not a game for the anybody can go over and play first base crowd.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Because guys were getting banged up and nicked up. And you certainly don't want him out of the lineup because of a collision or reaching down the line to catch a ball with his left arm and hitting the runner and hurting his shoulder. I get it. There's definitely some things to consider.
I mean, ask Kyle Schwarber. We saw what he
That's
did
right.
when he came to Boston 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, but Schwarber's not even a good outfielder.
No, yeah, it's true.
He's a DH.
Yeah.
He's just a DH.
He's
You'd be like
just
putting
a DH.
Yoshida over there. You know
That's
what I mean?
right.
So, listen, the third base, like Miggy went from first to third, back to first base. Pujols went from third to first. Vlad's gone from third to first. Like,
Yeah.
to me, telling a third baseman they can't play first is like telling a shortstop they can't play second.
That's
Not that it's easy, but you got to put some work in and try to get comfortable over there.
I want to ask you about the ace, Garrett Crochet. I mean, he is shoving. He goes 7 innings yet again. He ties Max Fried now for the most 7+ innings pitched in the American League. Dude is living up to all the hype, Lou. What do you see with him? Because his stuff is filthy, and he's a workhorse. It's kind of a throwback, isn't he, Lou?
Yeah, he is. He's exactly what you needed, and there's a bump in the road here and there. Like that last game he had, he going through 5, he kind of grinded, and it was like 94, 95, and he just – he didn't have the fastball, and you're like, okay, is he okay? We don't know the player. Then he comes out the other night, and he's throwing 97, 98, and you're like, okay, good. That's the guy that I remember. So, I mean, it's just take the ball every 5 days, be dominant, help your bullpen the night before, help the bullpen the next day. This is what an ace does, and that's exactly what Crochet's been doing for you. He has been fantastic.
And another big star coming up. We're going to see Brian Bayo, of course, be on the mound. It'll be
Yes.
Houck Bayo in this Tiger series. Crochet won't pitch until they're taking on the Braves. Same thing with Bayo. What have you seen from him now that he's back in this rotation?
Yep.
And this is a guy that is so pivotal for the success of this team overall.
I think the issue for him last year was he just looks more relaxed. There's not a contract sitting on his neck. He's not the opening day starter. He's not the but the proclaimed ace, of a team. You know what I mean? As a young kid who probably wasn't ready. Now he's a slow start to the season because of an injury, and he just joined the rotation, right? Crochet's the big dog. Buehler's the veteran. Here comes Giolito. He and Houck are just sort of settling in, in this rotation. He looks more relaxed. One of the biggest things so far, and it's early, but he's not allowing any damage. Guys in scoring position, he is shutting that down. He is executing when he needs to. And I would say last year he had that stretch where if he got into some trouble, there was, he would always throw a poor pitch, right? Change up, down and in, 3-run homer. A sinker right down the middle, 2-run double. He couldn't stop the bleeding, or he caused a lot of it, right, by just sort of letting it snowball. This year, not the case. He's been absolutely outstanding. Guys in scoring position, getting ahead, using that sinker a ton. The four-seamers more into play on certain nights. He's looked good. He looks relaxed.
Hey, Lou, appreciate you taking the time to join us on Boston Center of the Chat. And I got to say, I like this shot. I feel like I'm getting a glimpse into the future. You got a great head of hair, great beard. My man, you're aging like fine wine.
Yeah, you are.
Appreciate all you do. I'm liking this little blue steel from you and me. Trav's trying to catch up top, though.
Thanks, boys. Yeah, anytime. Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry. You'll start getting a little gray here, though.
Yeah.
This is where you're going to start
They're
getting the
coming
gray.
in. Yep, one here, one here.
I'll color mine.
Inevitable.
I won't allow it. Appreciate you, Lou. Thank you, man.
All right, guys. Take it easy.